everyone. Today we will continue our discussion on Slasher, which was invented by Vitalik Buterin, who is also the founder of Ethereum. So we discussed how we want to combine proof of work and proof of stake. And what we said is that we will have proof of work, and at the same time each proof of work block must be signed by somebody who is chosen in advance, right? So every block which is generated by proof of work is also signed. And we said that what we are going to do is, in case there is a fork which might be created while doing proof of work, we want to terminate this fork immediately by forcing this person to sign only one block at a particular depth in the tree. So if that person signs a second block, then he is going to get punished. So we said it's a little bit tricky to do this. So first of all, you can't just use normal proof of stake. Proof of stake produces a random person every time, right? And what if you have one person here, A to sign here and B to sign here? Then this is not going to work. You can't punish somebody for, it's not that you have the same person signing twice, you have two different people. So we want to have the same person chosen. You want to have some designated person who's chosen to sign at a particular level in the tree. Okay. So that's if we choose one person, this is how it would work. But then there's a problem. What if A doesn't sign at all? Then we are in a fix because we have proof of work, but nobody has signed it. So what we said is that instead of choosing a single person, we are going to choose a committee, and we will want 2/3 of the members of the committee to sign a block for it to be valid. So the question is, where do we decide this committee? How far ahead in time are we going to choose the committee? Okay, so let's think about that. So let's discuss about choosing the committee. Okay, to sign. So we have these proof of work blocks, and we are assuming that they are all signed. So suppose we are going to decide who is going to sign this block, and suppose we are going to decide it here. Suppose we are going to choose the committee here based on, let's say, the stake in the blockchain up to this point. Now there is a slight problem. What if, let's say, there was a fork over here, and let's say I chose the committee to sign the next block based on the stake over here. Now we've ended up with a problem because the state of the blockchain is different over here in these two blocks, right? The stake owned by people are different. So we could as well have committee 1 selected here and committee 2 selected over here. And this is a problem because we said we want the same committee to be selected at any particular level in the tree so that we can punish them later on if they try to misbehave and sign multiple blocks and so on. So choosing the committee here is a little bit risky because you might have a fork earlier. So you want to choose a committee at a point where it's very unlikely that you will have a fork which is existing from there. Okay, so if we look back in the blockchain, it's very unlikely that very far back from here, we will have a fork which is existing at the present time. Okay, so these very long forks are unlikely. Usually the forks will get resolved much sooner. So the idea is that you want to choose the committee far in the past. So choose signing committee. So suppose this is at, let's say at level K, this is BK. Choose signing committee for BK far back in the past. Okay, so ideally when you reach a particular level for a block to be signed, there should be only one committee eligible to sign a block at that level. Okay, and so you want no long fork to be existing. So suppose we choose the committee over here. Okay, so maybe there is a fork existing from here or a fork existing from here which goes all the way here, right? But it's very unlikely that you will have a fork of this kind which is going from here to here. Okay, and so this is sort of the last ingredient of Slasher, which I haven't yet discussed, that what we do is you choose a committee well in advance in order to sign a particular block. So let's look at Slasher in some detail. Let's say these are the Slasher rules. And first of all, blocks are mined using proof of work. But like we said before, we don't want to have the same amount of energy consumed as, let's say, in Bitcoin. So what we do is we deliberately decrease the reward exponentially fast over time, okay, but at a much higher rate than Bitcoin does. Okay, so the mining reward decreases by, let's say, a factor of 50 every year. Okay, and remember that for Bitcoin it is much slower. So Bitcoin, you have a factor of half every 4 years. Or since I'm talking about decrease factor, let's say factor of 2 every 4 years. Right? So you half the mining reward every 4 years. Now we have to look at the proof of stake part of Slasher. So every block has a designated set of designated signers. So you don't want a single person to be chosen. You have a set of designated signers. and these are chosen beforehand. So for a block to be valid, it must be signed by at least 2/3 of these committee members. So let's say greater than 2/3 of designated signers. So the question is, how do we choose these signers? So let's talk about potential signers. So when a block BK is produced, that's when we decide about the signers of a block much into the future. So when BK is produced, the potential signers of block much in the future are decided as follows. So the potential signers are a superset of the designated signers. So first you choose a set of potential signers, and some of these can volunteer to become designated signers. So the reason is that everybody with stake may not be participating in this whole signing business. Right? Somebody who owns some currency might just prefer to be offline. They don't care about creating blocks. Okay? So we choose these potential signers using proof of stake ideas, and some of them volunteer to be designated signers. So let's see how that is done. So potential signers of a block well into the future, let's say we are looking 3000 blocks in the future, are those with addresses, let's say with addresses, let's just say that the address is A. So anybody with an address for which this is satisfied. So I take a hash of BK and I take my own address, and if that is less than the balance at this particular point in time, multiplied by some target, then I'm a potential signer. Okay, so anybody in the blockchain can just plug in their address here and see if it is less than balance times the target. This is very similar to the proof of stake idea. It's just that we don't have a timestamp over here. So this is going to throw up some potential signers, and some of them may be offline. Okay, and they don't care about signing. So we want at least 15 people with addresses of this kind to volunteer to become designated signers. So we want about 15 members of potential signers to volunteer to become designated signers. Okay. And if it turns out that you have much less than 15 people who are volunteering to become a designated signer, then you would adjust this target. So let's just write that down. Target is adjusted so that about 15 people volunteer, or let's say, yeah, people volunteer every time. So if it's much less than 15, then we increase the target. If it's much larger than 15, then we'd want to decrease the target, right? It's just that the more people who need to sign the block, the more complicated the system becomes, right? So you want to have a number which is not too large but not too small either. Okay, because if you have it very small, then it's like having a single person who needs to sign, and that person could do some mischief. Okay, so this is the idea. So you choose the target so that roughly, let's say, 15 people have these sorts of addresses, okay, and they volunteer to sign. So now let's see how these designated signers can volunteer, how the potential signers can volunteer to become designated signers. So this is block BK, and we have BK plus 1 and so on, BK plus 64, and remember that we are choosing far in advance who is going to sign BK plus 3000, so that's well into the future, because we don't expect a fork to last from before BK all the way up to BK plus 3000. Okay? So at this point, after this point, the potential signers are decided, and some of them are offline, but some of them can volunteer, and they can do so by creating a transaction and saying that I am volunteering to sign BK plus 3000. So within this range of blocks, anybody can volunteer to become a designated signer. So any potential signer can volunteer, potential signer of block at this level can volunteer to be a designated signer by sending a special transaction so let's just call it a volunteer transaction, which must be included in BK plus 1 to BK plus 6, K plus 64. So within these 64 blocks, any potential signer can volunteer to become the designated signer of a particular designated signer of BK plus 3000. So by this point in time, the designated signers are decided. Okay, and let's say that let's say that all these people who have volunteered also have some money in the blockchain, which is going to be locked at this point in time. So, so let's say that it's a fixed amount that if you want to become a potential signer, you also have to have some particular amount, and you can indicate in that volunteer transaction which amount that is, which particular account, for example, that money is in, and that is frozen from here onwards. Okay. So to simplify it, you can just say that all the money in corresponding to the account which made you a potential signer, all that money is frozen. We can say that, but of course, different addresses have different balances, right? So maybe we want to change things, and we would have to say that you also have to have at least a minimum amount in some account, and you prove that you are the owner of that account in your volunteer transaction, and henceforth, at least for a long period of time, that amount is frozen. Okay, you're not allowed to spend it at all. So let's just write that down over here. So from here onwards, deposits of the designated signers are frozen. Okay, so definitely we want to freeze it up to here so that we can punish them, right? But you never know, somebody may be generating a private chain of some kind and signing it twice, right? So you don't want to release the money immediately here. You want to freeze the money for long enough after this BK plus 3000, just in case somebody is doing some sort of a private chain attack. Okay, so I just put a note here. So what about the first block? So we are talking about BK plus 3000 and BK and so on. What about in the beginning part of the blockchain? Right? Who's going to sign the first block and the second block and so on, right? Because you can't go back 3000 in time. So that's of course something which we have to take into account. And so for k is equal to 0, 1 and so on up to 2000, 2009, blocks have only POW. No proof of stake signers. Okay, so this is how to bootstrap the process. The first 3000 blocks are created just with proof of work. And from then onwards, you start this signing business. And so let's say block 1 is going to decide who's going to sign block 3001 and so on. Okay. So this is how you have designated signers chosen. Okay, so they are chosen based on the stake which was there at this point in time. Okay, they volunteer in this period of time and they put a deposit over here, locking that money for a long period of time. And now what do we want? So we want to actually see the signing taking place. So we have BK and BK plus 3000. So this block is generated with proof of work, but it has to be signed by at least two-thirds of the designated signers. So the designated signers had volunteered over here in the first 64 blocks. So two-thirds need to sign this block. And we'll have to see what to do if we have less than two-thirds signed. But like we discussed in the previous lecture, if greater than two-thirds are honest people, then we are guaranteed that we will only have at most one block which is signed by two-thirds. You cannot have more than one block signed by greater than two-thirds. Okay, that can be proved easily. Okay, so when do we release the money? So we want to keep the money for long enough, and we release the money at, say, block K plus 6000. Okay, so this is BK plus 64. So the deposit is frozen up to here. And the deposit is released here. Okay, so we don't have to deliberately do anything in the blockchain to allow or to free up these deposits. The rule can just be that whatever has been frozen cannot be spent anywhere in between. So no miner will include transactions which spend these frozen deposits here, but they are free to include transactions which spend those deposits after this. Okay. So the deposits are released at BK plus 6000. So if somebody tries to cheat, then we have to punish them. So if any designated signer signs more than one block, at level K plus 3000, he can be punished by an let's say a punishment transaction or an evidence transaction. Which gives proof of this signing. Okay, so if there is a second block here which somebody has signed, let's just call it B dash K plus 3000, and he has signed both of them, then somebody can include the evidence transaction anywhere here before BK plus 6000, and of course we would have to steal his deposit, or not steal, you should confiscate it. And as discussed in the earlier class, you want to split that amount to incentivize people. So some amount has to go to the person who's giving this punishment transaction. Some of that amount deposit has to be given to the miner, including the transaction. Okay? And the third part of it has to be bond. That means it has to be transferred to some, let's say, account for which we know that nobody has the private key. Okay? Something like where public key is 0. Okay. So let's see. So Buterin suggests that the person including this transaction should get 1/3. Okay, so that's one way to do it. You give 1/3 of the deposit to the person signing 1/3 to the minor and 1/3 you call. Okay, that's one way of doing it. So let's see. So what to do if not enough people sign a block? Let's say, what if signing is not appropriate? So suppose we are in a situation like this. So let's say this is bk minus 1, and you have bk over here. Let's say bk has been signed. And let's say that there is a second block here, and let's say both of them have been signed by more than 2/3. So this is one case. Or you might have that no block at level k has been signed by greater than 2/3. So if we have only a single block which is signed by at least 2/3, then we are in business. That is the block we include in the blockchain, and then we continue after that. So now we are in a fix. I mean, in both these situations, we either have no block or we have too many blocks. So what do we decide? How do we resolve this sort of a situation? So what Buterin suggests is that you actually skip this particular block. Okay, so if you have a problem like this, what he suggests is that you go directly to the next level and you skip from here to here. So you have a pointer to this, and you sort of assume that there is no block over here, and people can skip over and mine the next block using proof of work. But then there is an issue over here. I mean, this is definitely deviating from the typical blockchain structure. It's sort of like you're just saying that I'm orphaning any block created over here, because it either has there are too many blocks with signatures, or there is no block with enough signatures. So what we want to do is we want to make it somewhat difficult to create this sort of a block which skips over another one, because even if there is a single block which is properly signed, somebody might sort of try to do something like this and skip over, right? And then there's some sort of confusion. People will not know. Maybe they are just not aware of this block. Let's say, suppose there are two blocks which have been signed by 2/3. Okay. Then you see this block, and maybe this block you don't see, and somebody creates a block like this. Okay. So then what are we going to do? So it's getting already a little bit tricky, because what do we mean by bk plus 1, right? So of course you can put the block height within the block to say at what level in the tree it is, right? So that people don't confuse this block for being a block at level k. Okay. So what Buterin says is that you can generate such a block with proof of work, but it must be much more difficult to do so. So if we skip n blocks, So here n is equal to 1. Okay, we are skipping over one block, but he generalizes it where you may have a series of blocks like this which are not signed appropriately, and you may have to skip over them. So if we have to skip over n blocks, then new block, then the new block has to have difficulty, POW difficulty, eight times 2 to the power of n minus 1 of the normal difficulty at that level. So let's see what this means. So suppose there is a block here, and there was BK which, let's say, was not signed by enough people. So what we wanted to do is we wanted to create BK plus 1. And earlier we had a particular target. Let's say that the normal target this is for POW. Now the new target is 8 times T. So if at all we have a block which is not signed properly, we can skip over it in this manner. We indicate that this block is at the next level K plus 1, and in order to create it directly by pointing to BK minus 1 instead of a block at this particular level, we would have to create enough POW here in order to satisfy this, right? So actually I beg your pardon, so the target is actually going to become much harder, so we would have to decrease it by 8. Okay. And if there is a situation where let's say we have blocks created by proof of work, but let's say that these were not signed by enough people, so then anyone is allowed to skip over these and let's say that the target was T, normal target is T, and now the new target for proof of work will have to be what? We've skipped over 2 blocks, so remember it's 8 times 2 to the power of n minus 1, so n is 2 over here, so it's going to be T divided by 16. Okay. So you want to make it very difficult for somebody to create these blocks, because somebody might try to launch an attack of some kind, and even when you have valid blocks at these levels, he might try to create a block which points to a block much earlier, right? And that might confuse people. What do we have to mine on? Do we have to mine on this one, or do we have to mine on a block here? Okay. So clearly this is getting very complicated. Buterin's ideas may be interesting, but they're getting more and more complicated because we're deviating somewhat from the regular blockchain scheme, and you may even have to skip over blocks at a particular level. Okay, so this is in a nutshell what we are doing in Slasher. So let's recap Slasher and let's look at how it avoids different types of attacks. So we have block at level K, and so based on the stake over here, you have the potential signers. Anybody can just plug in his particular address into that formula we saw before. Then any of the potential signers can volunteer to become a designated signer, and they would do that by sending a volunteer transaction within this period. And their deposits are frozen. Then we move on all the way up to block K plus 3000. Now this block has to be signed by at least two-thirds of the designated signers. So these are the designated signers who have volunteered. So greater than two-thirds need to sign. And then we continue with proof of work and signing in the manner shown until we reach block K plus 6000, and this is when the deposits are unfrozen and they can be spent. So this is essentially what Slacker does. So let's look at some potential attacks and see why they don't usually occur here. So let's look at nothing at stake. So in the nothing at stake attack, if at all we have a fork here, in proof of stake, the miner can just keep mining on both. Here, of course, there is proof of work happening, so proof of work can't be just replicated just like that on multiple forks. You have to choose which particular fork you're going to mine on. Okay? But at the same time, you have designated signers. So the designated signers can only sign one of these. And if they try to sign more than one, they will be heavily punished. They will lose their entire deposits. Okay, so if this one is signed, then obviously all the proof of work will happen on it, right? And this continues, right? So wherever a natural fork occurs due to proof of work, it is immediately resolved by those who have to sign the block. And in case 50-50 sign these blocks, they are all honest, let's say, then we are in trouble because neither of the blocks is signed by more than two-thirds. And in that case, we use the special option in order to skip one block and directly mine on the parent, like we saw before. What about the long range attack? So in the long range attack with proof of stake, somebody went very far back in time and tried to create his own private chain, and he gained more and more stake as time went by, right? And so by the time he released the new chain, he had most of the stake in the network. Here it's quite tricky. So here, first of all, there is proof of work happening. So this is going to be non-trivial to do. Of course, the amount of proof of work is going to be lower because we've reduced the mining fees. Okay? But still, what if somebody does this, right? What if he creates a chain like this? Now the thing is, the designated signers, there are designated signers already for all these blocks, designated signers over here, and they are all going to sign their blocks, right? And people see these are valid blocks, so they keep mining on them. They do proof of work mining, and they keep signing these blocks. Now if the attacker releases chain, even, I mean, if suppose it has more proof of work, right? So suppose it's something like this, it has more proof of work, but none of these have been signed by anybody because the designated signers have already signed off here, and they dare not sign any one of these blocks because then they will be punished. No matter which chain wins, they can still be punished, because the punishment transaction can be included in any chain, right? And so let's say there's a designated signer set for this particular block. Their deposits are still going to be locked for another 3000 blocks. Okay, so they have to be very careful. If they try to do any mischief and try to sign another block at this particular level, then they will be heavily fined, okay, and they would lose their deposits, right? So this seems to have best of both worlds. It has some of the advantages of proof of work and proof of stake. So that's what Vitalik Buterin was after. But at the same time, we have to be a bit careful because the more complicated you make a protocol, the more the attacks that are possible, right? It's sort of like you're opening more fronts in a war. The more rules you have in your protocol, it's like opening up more fronts in the war, and an intelligent attacker might exploit some rule or the other that you have, right, and might be able to take you down. So it's an extremely complicated protocol compared to just proof of work of Satoshi. And Vitalik Buterin has used ideas of Byzantine fault tolerance. We'll study Byzantine fault tolerance later in the course, BFT. It's a concept quite old, at least 30, 35, 40, maybe 40 years old, right? And one of the creators of one of the major researchers in this area was somebody called Leslie Lamport. So one of the researchers, one of the, I would say, top researchers in distributed system. He's a Turing Award winner. He won it 5-6 years back, right? And he's also the creator of something called LaTeX. If any of you have used LaTeX while writing a report, the LA in LaTeX sort of refers to Lamport, right? So Lamport's ideas of BFT sort of Vitalik Buterin is using, and actually some people think Leslie Lamport may also be Satoshi Nakamoto, right? Because just probably Satoshi is at the same intellectual level as Leslie Lamport. Anyway, but it's an interesting idea, this slasher, but still it's very dangerous to use something like this in a system like Ethereum, which already is worth billions of dollars. If you put in a new protocol which brings down the system, then it's bad, right? Your entire business is gone. So Ethereum is first going to use an advanced version of Slasher, something called Casper, right? Of course, there are many modifications there, but it uses both proof of work and proof of stake. And they are implementing it in Ethereum 2.0 in a test bed. And once they are only very, very confident that it's all going to work out well, will they actually shift to, taking that protocol in the regular Ethereum, right, out of the test bed. So from the next class onwards, we'll discuss other topics like anonymity in Bitcoin.